but they're
I'm half off because our nanny is on vacation. So
Oh my God.
half
yes,
on, half off.
but he napped for 2
Well, let me
hours
just
and
do the
45 minutes in the middle of the day yesterday. So that was great.
yeah. So you're on call, really.
Yes.
I'll just do the quick little formal introduction for the video. I'm Mariana Donnelly. I work at the Department of Mental Health. I am coordinating Project Aware. I don't know whether I say I'm coordinating it anymore, or that I'm overseeing the coordination of it, but I'm supporting Project Aware and school mental health in general. And today we don't have any agenda. We just have this as an open session for folks to come in and ask questions and talk about what's going on with Aware. And that is for the LEAs and the DAs, but also for any partners or anybody who needs a little information or just wants to hear about what's happening. So I was off last week and I wasn't here for the for last week's office hours. So I don't know what came about there. But if there's more conversations to be had, maybe y'all can just sort of fill me in. Or if there's questions coming up for folks. You know, I left right after Best, and I feel like that was pretty energizing for me. I felt really excited after Best. And so I don't know if you all have heard feedback, if folks are feeling a little more comfortable or more overwhelmed. What are people getting?
I haven't heard much. I mean, Lindsay's here. She can tell you how she felt for her team. It sounded like there was some better direction coming out of it, but is that accurate, Lindsay?
I think that that's accurate. It just, the people that I brought with me, I don't think knew that they were going to become my team. So that was kind of interesting, but they all 100% were like, we want to be a part of this. We want to be a part of your team. So it just felt really nice at the end of the week to actually like, I have a team. Like I can actually see this getting into our different buildings now. So, and I have team members in elementary, I have team members in high school, and I have people that were already kind of bought in for middle school that weren't there. So it feels like it might actually happen now. Whereas before it felt like it was, how do I get there? So that was huge. And I really appreciated that. And not for nothing, but they're all like, can we do this again next year too? Like this was a great way to focus like on what Aware is and get the energy behind it, because I can see it flagging throughout the school year. And they all felt the same way. They're like, you know, school really bogs you down, but this is a great way to recenter, and they're looking forward to it. So I'm happy with that. Still just trying to figure out how to get through things. The meetings that you guys approved hours for are happening this week and next week, and the Trauma Catalyst is doing their meetings. I'm not a part of their meetings, but they're the ones that are with Dave Melnick. So I'm just trying to figure out that. And so our first meeting is trying to figure out, so we have our universal screener, that's fantastic, but we're not really utilizing the data from it. And we have this great dashboard that highlights everything that's with the universal screener. So absences, the results from the universal screener, benchmarking for academics, referrals, and Swiss data. All of that is in one spot, but we're not necessarily doing anything with it. Some of the schools are looking at it. Some of the schools we're finding are kind of looking at it maybe incorrectly. So this first meeting is to say, all right, if we have kids that are getting flagged by this dashboard as kind of high risk, what are we doing proactively? And that's the first meeting that's happening tomorrow, in hopes of trying to figure out what diagnostic tool, that's what we're calling it, can we utilize to start looking at these kids more in depth and determining, do they need higher interventions, greater interventions? So I think it's a big task for a meeting. I imagine there's going to be several meetings that come out of it, but this is at least a start.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That is the crux of all of this, right? Like it's trying to coordinate and organize what is happening and get people to all be moving in the same direction around this and help with communication around this stuff. So I think that I think that's so valuable. I'm so glad to hear that's where you guys are headed.
Yeah,
What
and I
about
was
other?
just,
Yeah.
well, I
go for it.
was just thinking about that summary, Lindsay, and that's just a, a great opportunity to look at data trends as well as you think about some of the resources and beyond and your relationship with your DA. And how are you addressing this sort of system-wide trends that you notice? And I was also just thinking about, really as you see those children that have intensive needs and that's supported by the data. And sorry, Rebecca, you're being respectful by putting your hand up, and I didn't put my hand up. I've already forgotten about that tool. Just thinking about, how are you then examining utilization of staff to address those needs? Is it on the high end, more people doing intensive supports than targeted and universal, things like that. So just some reflections about as you're looking at all of that and your team is becoming more cohesive around this. Mariana, do we have a template for the notes?
Not that I am aware of right now.
Let me look at our
Well, while you're figuring that out, I just would like to note, hi, Joe. Joseph Kill is here. I didn't expect to see him. I only know him from email. Hi. But he is from Barry. So there's some
Hi.
movement in the Barry team, which we're having an internal meeting about tomorrow. There's been some other movement I don't know about because Joe's here. So
Yeah, Karen's not here anymore, so I'm trying to jump in and start filling some of those shoes. It's definitely not my wheelhouse, but I always learn on the job, so here I am.
Joe, welcome. Why don't we do some introductions really quickly, just so you can get sort of a sense of who's here. You came on a little after I introduced myself, so I'll just do it again. I'm Mariana Donnelly. I am from the Department of Mental Health. I coordinate school mental health. So one of my roles is overseeing Project Aware and supporting the coordination of that. So maybe we can have our best folks who are our TA for Project Aware introduce themselves next.
So I'll just go since I'm Joe. I am the one of the TAs for Barry, along with Sherry Schoenberg, who's not here today, from the BEST project.
All right. Yeah, we worked with you, was it 2 years ago? A little bit? Okay.
Yeah, couple
I
times.
remember
Yeah.
paying those invoices.
Yeah.
And I'm Ken Kramberg. I'm the TA at UVM on the BEST team, providing technical assistance to Southwest Vermont SU.
Kim, you want to jump in?
Yeah, and I want to put my hand down. I'm Kim Asom. I am providing support as a part of the BEST team to CCSU and also doing some additional Project Aware support just based on I was a part of the first iteration. And Mariana, I don't know if you saw in the chat, Amy is taking notes on our meeting template, so hopefully that'll be
Awesome.
sufficient for you. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm Amy Wheeler Sutton. I'm the co-director of the BEST project and not providing any TA support for this, just more oversight and coordination.
And then we have some partner organizations that we're working with, and majority of them are not here right now, but we do have the Center for Health and Learning. Dina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I apologize. My camera isn't working today on Teams, but my name is Dina Chase. I'm a senior project manager at the Center for Health and Learning and one of the partners in the Aware project.
Thanks, Dina. So Joe, we have, I think, 5 different partnering organizations. So Center for Health and Learning is one, We have Up for Learning is doing student voice. Center for Health and Learning is doing suicide prevention. We have Dave Melnick from NFI doing trauma transformation in schools. We have Vermont Care Partners who work with all the DAs to have folks trained to provide trainings in mental health first aid. So there's youth mental health first aid for adults to understand youth mental health. And then there's teen mental health first aid, where we train the teenagers themselves or the students around mental health. And then there's somebody I'm missing. I always miss one somewhere.
Oh, is it ours? The Washington
it's-
Mental Health?
No,
Washington
it's
County?
Outright Vermont.
Outright. Okay.
Outright Vermont is the fifth partner. So these are the folks who are coming in and providing trainings
Oh.
in different ways to the DAs and the LEAs. So before we go further into aware stuff, how about the if our regions can introduce themselves? So I see JK is here, and Sean, and Des, and Martha.
Hello, I'm JK Sutton. I'm the coordinator for the UCS side of this project.
Thanks, JK.
Hey,
So
how you
they're
doing?
working with Southwest Vermont.
Yes.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Sean McGinnis. I am the product aware coordinator for Washington County Mental Health Services. So we'll be working pretty closely together.
Sure. Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, Joe.
And Martha?
I'm Martha Demers. I am the project work coordinator for CCSU.
And Des?
Hi, I'm Des Hertz. I'm the curriculum director at CCSU. Hi, Joe. I've met some of you. a
Hey,
bunch of
Des.
you.
Good to see you again.
You too. And yeah, I'm collaborating with Martha as part of the DCLT.
Awesome. So
And
Joe, as we
Lindsay, and Lindsay.
oh, it's not on my screen. Thank you. I'm Lindsay.
No worries. Lindsay with the SBSU. I work with Ken as our TA and JK as our DA.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Lindsay.
Sorry, Lindsay. And you've been around, I feel like you've been with us for years now. Lindsay was one of our first coordinators to come on. So she is really getting her feet under her, whether she likes it or not.
And Joe,
Kim.
I just want to say this is a head spinning kind of topic.
Mhm.
In general, there's a lot, so do not worry. We'll have, I mean, everybody, probably there'll be some nods that this is like a process that everybody is still in, right? You see Lindsay, Martha, like everybody's still in it. And we will definitely be supporting Barry around getting up to speed in a gentle way.
Thank you.
So don't worry, like this, you're gonna hear a lot of things even here that you might be like, what the heck is this? I need to figure it out. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping to catch up with HR because I know they interviewed for a couple coordinators. I don't know how they went, or if they've offered the positions or if they're starting. I have no idea. But they're not here today for me to converse with about where we're at with that hiring process. So I know that was like a big hurdle that we were trying to cross off before Karen left.
Yeah, the hiring process is not easy, but I'm excited to hear you guys are interviewing. That's great.
Thank you.
Kim.
Thanks, Mariana. So just, I was thinking, I sent an email to the BEST folks, and part of it was related to Ken, the ongoing meetings that you've kind of had from the beginning with Lindsay and supporting her in her work. And then Martha and I met last week and just kind of like, wow, so it was Martha's official first day was last Monday. Thank you very much, even though she was at BEST. And
Amazing.
she's participated in other ways. And so we were kind of reflecting on BEST, right, and some of the work that your team did, Martha, you and Des. I know Des, you weren't there, but some of the work around the initiative inventory and the template for implementation. And we've talked about this before, but just thinking about, can we use office hours, or is there another forum that we could use for the identified coordinators at this point to come together and just kind of share ideas, cathect a little if that's what they need to do, talk about where they're at in the process, different tools that they might be using that they find helpful, how they're using some of the resources. One of the things I was reflecting on, Martha, after we met, I revisited your job description that was developed by Mariana and Laurel. And I just wondered, so when you look at that job description, how does that reconcile with the best strand, and where's the intersection, and are there still some gaps there? Because you're the MTSS coordinator for CCSU, which is really bigger than the project aware coordinator, even though we need the MTSS framework in order to be able to install mental health effectively in school. So those are just some thoughts that I had tossed around with Cassandra and Ken and Rebecca and Cassandra. And I know Sherry had some ideas, but I see she's not here either. So I don't know, it's kind of a lot I just said, but do we take advantage of this existing forum to intentionally support the coordinators with what's kind of percolating for them?
I think perhaps it could be, I mean, I do think that this is a forum for all folks to get support for what's percolating around Project Aware. And part of me feels like I want to make sure that that still exists somewhere, so that if we did get so focused on the coordinators who are really going to be in it and doing the work, would we start talking in ways that other folks wouldn't understand, and would they have room to come in and ask their budgeting questions or like other little things? Would we need to have a specific space for just the coordinators to come together and really talk about what they're grappling with and working on? And sometimes it's going to be trying to get the DA on board, or the admin at the LEA to, like, they're taking on other initiatives, and how do we keep this one moving? And so sometimes they might need a space to talk about that on their own, knowing that it's just them and their support folks present. And I'm more than happy to be at that or not be at that, whatever you all think is best. But it seems like having maybe like a safe space to come in and just be like, how do we do what we're trying to do here, might be needed.
Yep, I agree.
But I
So
think you're
Marianne,
right,
it
Kim. I
sounds
think we've
like-
got to make that happen.
Yeah, so I appreciate that perspective of this is really kind of the larger forum for anyone that's involved in the project, partners or DAs or SUSDs. And then it sounds like not to make a gazillion meetings for people, but maybe a separate intentional forum for the coordinators to come together would be the way to start it. And then just kind of see where that goes and how often folks want to meet. And it would be great if you're there, or if Christelle would be the person that
Yep.
comes to that, I don't know, but it would be great to have that representation from, mental health as well. And maybe someone from
Yep.
AOE. And, the other thing I was just thinking is there were, it's sort of a safe place. There were times last iteration, sorry to be the last iteration queen, but where sometimes the coordinators came together and they didn't want anyone else there, which
Mhm.
was totally fine too. So just being thoughtful about, is there an intentional agenda, or is there just a time to kind of a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that those are good pieces to ponder and make sure that you all have the space and the support that you need in whatever way. And I think that we can be really flexible. I would be happy. Christelle and I can be there. She's still onboarding, and but Kate Abbott over at AOE, she's sort of been in administration for a while, so she's a little she understands this world a little clearer. So I'm sure she would be happy to be there, and she's like ready to, her onboarding process is a lot faster. So, yeah, I think we could make that happen. And we can talk more on email about how to coordinate that and what the best plan is for scheduling those. What other thoughts do folks have? Joseph, did you say what your role is? I don't know if I heard that part at Barry.
I don't think I mentioned it. So they call me the grants and data coordinator. I mostly handle fiscal things.
Okay.
But sometimes programmatic things will cross my desk too. Like I outlined a timeline for us in January, I think, after our initial meeting. At that time, Chris was not interested in it. And then Karen kind of picked it up and took it from there. So I'm jumping in now because now Karen's not here. So
Okay. And just know that, as Rebecca said, like this is going to be a gentle process, and all timelines that we created in the beginning have not been met, and we don't expect them to magically be. And we are just going to be as flexible as possible, and the state will work with SAMHSA on whatever needs to happen in a timely manner and advocate for you all.
okay. Well, it's good
Lindsay.
to know because, if I have to pick up pieces and push things along, it's good to know where I need to be.
Yeah, and so I think keeping this space, at least for, the beginning of next year, I imagine, as long as folks are coming and utilizing this time, this office hours, I think having this space so that you could come in and be like, we have this on the timeline, and, like, how are we supposed to meet these things? And we can sort of talk about what the expectations are and where there's flexibility and where there might not be as much. Lindsay, you had your hand up.
Oh, my question is completely off topic to this. Am I good to go? Okay. So yesterday we received an email from Christina Maddox with UMatter, saying that there was some trainings coming up this summer, and it would be a great opportunity for us to, kind of tag into those trainings to see what really is available on offer to be able to better discuss it. So it kind of brings around a question that's been kind of running around in my brain. Is it acceptable for me to say to one of my team members who expressed great interest in wanting to take this training to kind of vet it out and see, how we can make this work for SVSU? Is it all right for her to kind of jump on board and kind of like take that aspect of this, because she's one of the big members of the counseling and clinician groups. So she's like one of the big ones that needs to buy into the training in order to want to move it forward within the SVSU. So to me, I could take the training, but it seems like it would be way more effective if she's the one that takes the training. So I guess that's my question is, if I have individuals that have said, I really want to work on the UMatter part, or I really want to work on the student voice part, is it all right to kind of like let them get into the nitty gritty of that? Or is that something that you would more prefer the coordinators to get into? I'm just trying to like,
Yeah.
is it all right?
Ken, were you going to say something about that?
I was. So I think it's actually a really effective model to go to you sort of broaden the ownership when you're trying to bring people in. So this is a really good example. This is a counselor who's pretty well embedded with her peers, and if she gets on board with this and brings it back, it's going to be a much more effective way to integrate it with the counseling team there. So I like that a lot. I think it's going to be much more effective than just having the coordinators attend those things. If we can get people to take on different areas and bring it back to the team. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sorry, this is Dina. I'll just add that that's an invitation for all teams. So any team that wants to attend the UMatter training coming up, July 10th or the one in August. They're both the same training, just so you know, Lindsay. It's not multiple trainings, it's one training, but it's offered multiple times. But it is available, and we can pass along the free code if someone wants to attend. And if that would help, as Ken's saying, kind of create a champion for your team, that would be awesome to have anyone attend.
And Dina, I'm glad you jumped in because I was going to ask you, this is the You Matter for Schools training. So then is it, what are your thoughts around one person? Oh, sorry.
It's not the You Matter for Schools. I'm sorry. It's a You Matter awareness training.
Oh, okay.
It's an awareness training. Yeah.
Okay. So then it does make sense to have, it's okay for a single person to
Yes,
come
absolutely,
learn
yeah.
about it, bring that back, and then talk about why they need to, how and what they would get out of You Matter for
Yes.
Schools and how to structure that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't
Okay.
have a schools training coming up until October.
Okay, so just to clarify for folks, You Matter for Schools is a team approach. And so you bring a team to the training. And that part of that is that the team comes together and works on what their suicide protocols and policies are and how they want to, dust them off, take a look at them, see if they're up to date and how to communicate on them. Dina, I feel like I'm talking about your actual expertise here and not mine. So
No, you did a great job. That's exactly right. And it really is a team program. So we would want at minimum 2 people from a school, but I think we've asked for 7 actually to come, and at least 1 being an administrator is really helpful in order to, because it's not just a training where you're done after you've taken the training. It's training about how to implement policies and procedures and how to create a sustainable model around suicide prevention. So you really need a team surrounding you.
great. Yeah, so having somebody come to that awareness training, I think makes a lot of sense, Lindsay. And then when they're in the DCLT and can talk about what it is, what this is and what they understand, how they understand it to fit into the work. And the same with any of the others. I think if folks wanted to dabble in it and try to figure it out, I would just say that it also seems like a DCLT sort of decision, and that like you might want to bring the folks together and say, here's what we're thinking. These folks are going to go off and investigate these areas and come back to us. Kim.
Yeah, I was just thinking again about how in the last round there were a lot of people, they were queried by WestEd about did they know what the crisis and suicide protocol was in their schools, and many people said no, they didn't know. And so it's great to have a champion to do this, and just being really thoughtful too about how do we ensure that all schools have a pathway, right? That they have, a screening and assessment process, even if that assessment process is with the DA, and that people in the school have familiarity, that even that they know it exists, even if they don't have fluency in that pathway, that they know it exists. I think that's a big part of sort of that systems work again.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kim. You cut out a little bit, but I think people heard the gist of that in the previous Project Aware WestEd did some surveying of our clinical folks in the schools and trying to figure out who knew about and how much they knew about the suicide prevention protocols and whether or not they used them. And we were really struck with how many people didn't actually know what the protocols were and where to find them. And so even though they exist, they're sort of on a shelf. So how do we make sure that a math teacher who's concerned about a kid knows where to go and there's a path to follow to get that support, and everyone's really aware of it. Martha.
I was just curious of when the August date was.
Dina, do you have that August date for the You Matter awareness training?
For both dates, I know.
Yeah,
Rebecca
let me
had a
just
question
look.
too.
Did Lindsay, did she put it in her email?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have the email. So the
I'm sorry,
the
people are
July
cutting in and out.
10th.
Might be on my end.
Go ahead,
There's
Lindsay.
July 10th and then August 14th, and they're all 10 to 12.
Thank
Yeah, and
you.
it's on, I can. Sorry, the chat feature isn't working for me. It just Teams doesn't generally want to work for me.
Sorry.
So I can't put, I want to put the link to our website and that's where you can find all of our trainings, but they're essentially they're monthly, the second Wednesday of the month from 10 to 12 for the UMatter awareness training.
Great.
Thank you for all of that. That's very helpful. So I'm just gonna, I've sent that out to my team member and hopefully we'll be able to get her into the August one because she was really interested in that. And I know I have
good.
another
Thanks.
person that was really interested in running with the student voice portion. She was like, sign us up. I want to do this. So that anything that I can like kind of funnel for direction to get her more info on that, I'll definitely look for that too. So thank you for answering that.
Thank you for asking.
That's great. So the student voice piece is the Up for Learning folks, and they did a really great job at BEST talking about the work that they do. And I do have to say that folks who in our previous Project Aware, see, I'm the previous queen too, Kim, I'm right there with you. The schools who worked with Up for Learning found the funding, searched high and low for the funding to continue to work with them because I think it was so they saw such value in getting the students active and hearing their voice. Amy.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember that brought up memory from the end of that meeting on Tuesday at BEST with the partners and kind of next steps. And I want to say that maybe the TAs were going to make some connections between the partners and the coordinators at the sites. So I'm wondering, like, Lindsay, if your person who is interested in kind of running with the Up for Learning work, if they are a summer employee, if maybe Ken can help facilitate a meeting with that person and you and whoever the main contact from Up for Learning is going to be to think about what, some first steps might be. Because I know they're eager to kind of get with the teams and figure out what they might be able to do.
I can definitely tell you that all of the individuals that expressed interest are all on the teacher contract. So they aren't necessarily summer employees. That is definitely a big part of, I think, kind of getting bogged down in the summer. A lot of people just aren't available. So like even the individual that I was talking about for UMatter, she's also, she's off on summers. So I can't guarantee when she's going to check, her email, her work email again. But they've expressed interest. I anticipate the summers to be pretty slow in terms of, getting to work with the individuals that are in the buildings. And not for nothing, but even directors and administrators, their summers are a lot more lax. So just getting responses back and forth are very slow.
That makes a lot of sense, Lindsay. I wonder too if is it possible in the summertime to talk with administrators and figure out if, I know that they have their in-service that's probably been booked and scheduled for a year now, but is there room or flexibility? Is there time? Often, is there time to focus on some of the aware stuff or think about how to start introducing some of this, or when some of these folks can go off and start looking into some of these areas of training. I just remember when when I was in schools as the social worker, there was a team of us who were just sort of those special services folks, whether it's the school nurse, the school counselor, the social worker, those folks who don't, they kind of follow the herd in that in-service week, but it's not actually always that applicable to their job. And so I just wonder if there's a way, since those are the people that we would really like at the heart of some of this work, if administrators would consider pulling them together at some points and thinking about how to get their input on the work. It's sometimes a tough sell, I know, because they're really bought into their what they've planned out for in-service, and so it can be really challenging. But when you're looking at a new attendance protocol, or your new math scoring or whatever it is, it doesn't always apply to those folks. And so how can we use that time, because that's a good chunk of time. Tim, I'm looking at your comment. Martha mentioned an administrator retreat. Are other SUs having leadership retreats? Yeah.
I know that our administrators also have a retreat, and I know it's funny you mentioned an attendance policy, because that was a big one that they were going to be bringing up at the administrators retreat. So I think it would be really nice if Aware could kind of get a voice in that just for a little bit, but I don't even know how to go about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have DCLT meetings scheduled at all in the summer?
Yes.
Lindsay, you guys do?
Yep.
I wonder if that's a place to ask about and talk about that. And is your DCLT, is there administrators present for that?
So we have two. I know one of them declined all of the summer meetings. And the other one, it's kind of hit or miss if they attend. So hopefully there'll be an administrator at the table, but I can't guarantee it.
Kim, jump in.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I'm chatting a lot today. I just, Lindsay, I was thinking about that, that attendance policy or practice, and that's just a perfect example of how do you integrate that conversation into the work of Project Aware. So I think a lot of people identified attendance as a challenge and possibly a safe and healthy school goal, or under the objectives maybe of that goal. So rather than, again, it feeling like it's another thing, this Project Aware is another thing. We know that Project Aware and that framework of the interconnection can help with the implementation of that policy and help to examine the data further and making sure that you have effective tools to address that need.
I definitely agree with that. It's just a matter of whether or not you get welcomed into those types of meetings. And not saying that like I'm unwelcome anywhere or anything like that, but people kind of have their groups, and it's a matter of trying to infiltrate, if you will, those different groups to get into those different areas. And it feels like, in terms of attendance, I've just been invited to one of those summer meetings, so that's exciting. I'm excited to go there and kind of be there and hopefully be able to get into it. But it's tough, because it's almost like when you, or at least when I initially presented Aware, it was very like, I'm not real sure what Aware is. I'm trying to figure out what Aware is. So it was a tough introduction, and now people have kind of put me in you are a suicide prevention grant. And that is what AWARE is to a lot of people. So now it's having to pull back from that and essentially start again and say to all of the different administrators in buildings, our different directors in the central office, that no, really, this is what AWARE is. And this is all of the different things that AWARE has the ability to do. And these are the various goals of AWARE. So it's kind of like I'm taking a whole bunch of steps forward in terms of getting some work done, but I also have to take a massive step backward to kind of correct some of the misconceptions that exist about AWARE.
And I imagine that is something that keeps happening as there's turnover and people shift. And so I think you'll get better and better at it. I feel like we did in the first AWARE have to get better and better at trying to explain it because there was so much practice in it. Rebecca.
I think the idea of the administrator retreat, which I think most districts do, it might be a great idea for coordinator, whoever it would be, coordinators probably, to try to get a little piece of the agenda there, because that's everybody in one building. They're not going to I can't make it because it's a big deal. They probably have lots on their plates, but to be able to ask for 20 minutes, we have the slides, we have the basic information, and going in with more information from just from time passing from BEST. I think that would be that could be a good idea.
Is that something that the TAs would be able to support too? Could it be a joint effort in going in between the coordinator and the TAs?
I think that would be a great idea. I think that would be, that's going to help I would imagine. I mean, having come from the other direction and doing this kind of thing and trying to get the administrators on board, in my previous life, I think, sadly, it lends some weight when somebody else comes in from the outside. Having that inside and outside together makes more weight.
Yeah.
And then
absolutely.
I think the way, and also brainstorming how to present it, and it would have to you'd probably have to do that pretty quickly, because whenever they're scheduled for could be, who knows, soon. How to present to get the 20 minutes of time. That'll be a little proactive kind of sneaky. How are we going to get in there? Oh, Sam sub, like whatever that is.
Sales pitch. Yeah. And perhaps, maybe DMH and AOE could request it of the SUs and see, could we just have 20 minutes while you have everybody there to just at least explain what this is. And I do think you're right, Rebecca. It does. It's helpful when you have an outside person come in, and it's helpful, I think, to the coordinator potentially when an outside person comes in too, because then they also have more clout. So when the outside person leaves, people will turn to Lindsay or Martha or JK or whoever and just be like, you're the person who seems to know about this.
And if Kate were one of the participants as well, we want Kate to come from the AOE, that would carry a big 20 minutes. These 3 people are going to come, boom, but or more time. They also, in my experience, administrative teams, they meet all year, and generally that is not something that they don't cancel out of that easily. If there's a crisis in the building, they cancel out, but it's kind of a high expectation, I think, that the administrators are there. But summer would be great to go for. But I think that would be a big, soft hammer if Kate or somebody from AOE, Kate probably would come.
I don't know if your screen showed you, Rebecca, but as you said, if Kate would be present there, she literally appeared on the screen and in this meeting because she was in another meeting prior to this.
That's because I'm super magic and I just conjured her up. You're welcome. Sorry, Kate, for whatever else you were doing.
Oh, I am super receptive to the magic that is summoning me. So that is why I came. That's how I roll.
Kate, we were just talking about that some of the SUs have administrator retreats. And is that a time that we can try to request 20 minutes to come in and present on Project Aware? So the coordinator could come in and present. Their TA could be a support to them in that. And if you were there and DMH was there, it would, really it's AOE that carries the weight. But I think that would be great.
I think that would be fantastic too. It's funny because we were just in the SAMHSA monitoring meeting, but I saw your chats coming in. So I said, oh, our LEAs are talking about how they're going to connect with the administrators and, ask them to schedule in-service time, et cetera. I think that would be fantastic. I will be enormously pleasantly surprised if the district, the administrator retreats, if they're able to give us some time. But I absolutely and am happy to, support, both attend and, help coordinate that if that would be helpful.
Okay, I'm going to put that on our state team agenda to talk about how we can, I think if we request it as a state team, it might be more likely that we get a better reception.
I do think it's good. I don't, Burlington School District is on the bigger side, so I don't know other districts' timelines, but those plans for like the 2024-2025 in-services, they may already have some plans in place. So certainly the sooner that we can start talking about carving out some space, even if all the details aren't ironed out yet, but just getting that on their radar, figuring out who in the district coordinates with the principals around those in-service times. I think the sooner that we can identify those opportunities and sort of, reserve them, so to speak, the better.
We were.
I'm sorry.
Go, Rebecca.
Just catch you up, Kate, we were kind of talking about two different things and your chat might not have caught up with you. So one was like in service, and then more recently, when I summoned you, what we were talking about is getting on an administrator meeting agenda.
Yep, I got that. So yeah, those two set, and I think both of those are great ideas. And I think the sooner we talk with the district leadership about both of those, the better.
One of the things we had talked about for the in-service is that I was just drawing from my experience as a school social worker that oftentimes those sort of student services, sort of special people are in the in-service with everybody and they're sort of following the herd, but it doesn't always apply to their work. Because it's more focused on, academics or proficiency based or whatever they're focused on in the moment. And could we make a pitch, or would there be a way to make a pitch? Who would be the appropriate? Would it be the coordinators, or how could we talk about it with the administrators for gathering those people even and in the in-service time and introducing Aware to them and talking to them about how this fits in their system.
I have no idea if this is helpful, but just in terms of setting Aware up for success, like your future iterations, should there be future Aware iterations? Like this seems really like a great way to start the Aware program with helping administrators understand what this is, and then having your coordinator come in and then like the administrators can also help guide your coordinator versus your coordinator just kind of like flailing and trying to figure out where am I? How does this work? So I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if there's future ones, but I feel like that would be an amazing way to start Aware. I think it would be great. If you could
Yeah,
keep it
I think
simple.
that makes a lot of sense, Lindsay. And if we could have done it the way we wanted, we would have, we would have taken a year and tried to explain aware and talk about, gather some of the data that exists and really try to help the administrators understand what this is and what they're signing up for. But SAMHSA doesn't, these grants, maybe it's not just SAMHSA, maybe it's just federal grants. They don't really let you do it that way. And so it gets very tricky, but I do think we should keep that in mind because we did push some boundaries this time so that we could have it be a little more thoughtful and planful than it was even last time.
So I have another question with 5 minutes left to spare. I'm sorry.
Go for it. No, sorry.
Do we know yet, because obviously so many of us have spent very little money that was set aside for year one. Do we know if all of our money that was set aside for year one, if that's going to roll over to year two?
We don't know for sure yet. We have to put something into SAMHSA to say this is how much we have left over and can we roll this into year two, and this is our plans for it. So I would need to talk to the state team to figure out if whether or not we need thoughts from you all about how you would spend the money, or if we already know because of the things that haven't happened in the timeline yet, and we would just push that down the road and see. So I will be in touch with you guys to see if we need some information from you about planning around that. But yeah, we can't, we have to wait for their approval before we know we have it.
Okay. And then I don't know if this is in the AWARE documentation and I've missed it. And if I have missed it, I'm sorry, but do we know what the spending looks like without rollover spending for year two?
Oh, like a plan B? We don't. I think once we know whether or not we have approval, we will have to figure out, if we didn't get that approval, we'd have to figure out what to triage and what to move around. I think we're just crossing our fingers that we will get it, so we don't have to do all of that, because it's a little bit of a nightmare. And I'm pausing because I'm trying to remember what the timeline is, and I think, in the past it's been pretty challenging with getting a response from SAMHSA. We can't put that request in early because then they think we're planning on not spending the money, and they don't like that. So we have to put it in as we're ending, and then they take a while. In the past, they took a long while to give us an answer about that. And I'm hoping that it's shorter this time, but we probably won't know until we're into year two. So it's a little tricky. We'll know what we have currently for year two, and we'll work on that spending, and then just hope that other is coming in.
Okay. So I think my question and hope is, I know that you had said you kind of wanted like our guesstimate budget, if you will, for lack of a better term, by like August 9th of what do you think you want to do within the next year? Is that still accurate? Okay, great. And then knowing that, could we kind of put our heads together in terms of, like, I know I asked for summer hours, and I know I'm probably going to ask for summer hours for the rest of the grant. So like, is there a good amount to guesstimate on that? I don't want to under guesstimate on what I think we're going to need. I'd rather over and it be less. But like, I know summer hours, I know we're looking at a diagnostic tool. I have no idea what a diagnostic tool costs, or if it's something we're going to want to build in-house. But is there like a very broad framework of like, these are probably things you could potentially be thinking about wanting to spend money on, just to get our brains in the right spot? so that we can give you a better idea. Does that,
I think
that
what
even
SAMHSA
feasible?
wanted some more detail on, really what we're trying to do is answer SAMHSA's question of what is the budget detail for some of these LEAs, specifically around the universal screening line. So, and this is where I'm not a budget person, and so I don't know if, if Joe or if your budget people might have a better sense, but I think they have to do this stuff a lot, and they know how to kind of be like, okay, we're gonna guess it's about 20,000 for this. We're gonna do extra summer hours for you here. We're gonna and figure out how to make it flexible so that when it turns out that it's 30,000, you know where you have areas that you can pull from to cover that.
I think where we're getting stuck a lot, at least in my district, is we already have our universal screener. So trying to understand what we can do with that bucket of funds that will be acceptable and allowable. So I understand that I'm not going to be the generic one here. I stick out, so I'm sorry I take up the time with this, but I think we're getting very stuck on what happens there.
Well, I think it sounds like you guys have some schools who are not screening yet, correct?
Very few, and just a small amount. And our screener, not for nothing, it's free.
Oh, great.
So
that's great.
there's no
Very
cost.
sustainable.
Yes.
So I think it's about thinking about trainings for those. I think it's about looking at your TAs, I think will have much more ideas on this than I will, but I think it's looking at the system and how do you get that screening data to talk to, do you look at a dashboard of some kind, which is what some folks in our previous AWARE started doing. Amy, I'm going to let you jump in because I'm talking in areas I don't know.
Well, I was just wondering if they, like, let's say they had $40,000 on their universal screener line and they thought they were going to be able to spend that on stipends for their mental health staff to review the results over the weekend or something. And that was a no, they can't use it for stipends. Could they shift that $40,000 to another line, Summer Institute registration or, a social emotional learning curriculum or, can they completely shift it to a different line or does it have to stay within universal screening?
There's certain shifting that happens for SAMHSA. I think anything is shiftable to some extent, but some of it requires more permission from SAMHSA and some of it we can just do. So, it's the first day back from vacation, so I cannot remember any of the language that they use. But if we're making major shifts in the budget, then we have to ask them for permission on that, and then have them, give us that before we can spend or do any of those things. But if it's things within I don't know where the categories, like where they draw that line exactly. So I have to figure that out. Kate, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, in office hours last week, we talked about the budget, and I believe what Laurel said was what you just said, Mariana, which was that the shifting is possible, but it would require first DMH approval, and then depending on what kind of shift, there might need to be another layer of SAMHSA approval. So I think Laurel will have Laurel or Christelle will have more information on that, but it sounded like yes, be creative and pursue, drawing up plans that you'd like to pursue, and then the next step would be reaching out to the DMH folks for approval.
Yeah, and I think we want to entertain anything that you think would be helpful. So put in what makes sense to you, and if it's not allowable and we can't make it work, let's figure out how to still get that need met somewhere else in another way.
And just making sure you identify why the need, why you need that, and how is it going to benefit the program and whatnot. Like, so like if you have the answer to all those questions that DMH would ask, then you could get a simple answer as like, okay, that sounds great, and move forward from there.
Unless we have to get
Excuse me, let me correct it.
SAMHSA approval.
Yes, unless it needed a higher SAMHSA approval. But yeah,
Right.
Sorry.
And it is 12:05, so if people need to hop off, that is okay. And we'll wind this down in a second, but I do see Amy's hand real quick.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we also have some flexibility within our best budget, for the same reasons, like not being able to spend down, within year one and not having that guarantee of carryover. So if there was something that you were like, oh, it'd be really awesome to have this, speaker come, or host this webinar or something, like we've talked about bringing in Kathleen Lane so that the other two districts could hear from her about universal screening. I know, Lindsay, your district's worked with her a lot, but if there are things like that we could, satisfy in our budget, that would work for all three LEAs. Or if there was, you wanted your TA to come and do a 1-day training on some, universal prevention strategies or something that like fit within the grant, that we could pay someone to do. Same with Amy Flamini. So we have a contract with Amy Flamini. If you wanted her to come to one of your DCLT meetings, like anything like that, if you're like a little stuck on your side of the budget of seeing how that would fit into certain line items, if it's something that fits within our scope of work, we could talk about whether that's something we could pay for too. Because we just don't want the money to go unspent.
Thanks, Amy. That's really helpful.
Thank you. That it kind of helps. I will pull together what I can and I will get it to you for August 9th. One last parting thought.
Lindsay, it's not like we don't need, we also know that like you guys are still figuring this stuff out. So you get it to what you have together and let us know. And it can even be like, we're not sure how to spend this chunk. And like, maybe that's where we come in and try to talk about it together. So you do not need to have formal answers ready for us and a presentation, like this is a gentle approach. I like how Rebecca said that. We're doing a gentle approach here.
Beautiful. I like gentle. Oh yeah, my one last thought. My whole team loved working with Amy Flamini, like loved it. She really helped focus us. That was amazing. But it would be absolutely amazing if in the future at the Best Institute, if we could plan to somehow like gather our entire DCLT and actually have a DCLT meeting with Amy Flamini present over the summer to kind of like help really guide our work for the next year. I think she could really be an amazing focus for the DCL team to be able to take advantage of. I think she could really help steer us. And I think that would be amazing because I liked having our team, like our team of 4 or 5, and that was great. But to have the whole DCLT, whether they're there remotely or they're able to just join us in person for a little while for a day, just to have an actual meeting and really like look towards the future and set us up for success for the coming year. I think that would be amazing.
You're saying that to do that in the summertime?
Yeah. Yep. I think it would be great for each year. It would just be astonishing. Like, I really feel like it would be very good for us.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to do one before September 30th, when this funding is running out, you could do 2 a year.
Good to know.
All right, folks. Thanks for staying extra. Sorry, I am not the best timekeeper and I always let people keep going, but I appreciate you all coming and bringing your questions. And Christelle and I and Kate are always available by email or whatever means to just keep asking your questions. You don't have to wait until Tuesdays. Yeah, have a good week and we'll be back next Tuesday. Kate.
One last thing. I've had some email issues with my new state of Vermont email address. I want to make sure this may not permanently be my email address, but the one that works is kate.k.paxton. I updated it on our contact list, so it should be accurate there. But if you send it just to kate.paxton@vermont.gov, it's probably not going to get to me at this point.
And maybe not get kicked back to them. It's going somewhere, right?
Well, it was weird. It's some people were having them kick back, but then others weren't. And then IT told me that it should be set up now so that the ones that weren't getting kicked back would be forwarded directly to my new, but I just don't want to, rely on that. So, and hopefully at some point they'll figure it out. It sounds like it's a Microsoft Office issue and resolve it so I can go back to the regular email address and they'll do everything behind the scenes so it's not confusing. But in the meantime, try to update your, like if you have a thread, if you can just try to check and make sure that it's got this email address on it for me, that would be great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks all.
See you tomorrow morning, Lizzie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
There we go.